Hey guys, I just ate the burger. Dave, you want to show everybody the burger you're eating? You saw David with that burger. Sorry I didn't make as many. A little bit of a hurry. I got rehearsals for Dinner Time Live with Joe Coy and Nikki Bella today. But we're doing our 25 for 25. And we did a little bit over the summer where we're going to take ideas that have really helped and shaped how we eat and dine in the world today. The main sort of idea here is the rise of fast casual. And that really sort of took off right around the financial crisis of 2008. But today, to lead up to that, we're going to talk about the rise of the burger and all the things that needed to happen for that 2008 sort of boom to happen. So we're going to talk about Daniel Boulud's DB Bistro Moderne. We're going to talk a little bit about Shake Shack, but more specifically, we're going to talk about Pat LaFreda and how, I sort of joke, it was like the NVIDIA, which who the fuck knows exactly what it does, but it seems like it's really important for AI. But the burger movement, particularly in New York, and then which spread all over the world, could not have happened without the rise of the celebrity butcher and sort of the meat blends that they made. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that. And then I'm going to make not a lot of kind of burgers. I'm going to make one. They're delicious. So stay tuned.
This episode is presented by Vital Farms. Look, when it comes to cooking, I say it all the time. You're only as good as your ingredients. And that's why you've got to use Vital Farms. Their eggs are legit. The hens get to roam around outside, forage in grass, and feel the sunshine. And you can trace your eggs back to the farm they came from. Seriously, you can see an actual video of the actual farm where your eggs were laid on their website. Whether you're poaching eggs for breakfast or folding them into something like a souffle, reach for Vital Farms. You'll love the taste. Look for the black carton in the egg aisle and visit vitalfarms.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Dave Chang Show, part of the Ringer Podcast Network, presented by Major Dome Media. Thank you, Yola Tango, as always. You're watching this and listening to this on YouTube or Spotify. So as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, we're at Studio 2, downtown at the Row. We're going to talk about burgers for the goal to sort of prime ourselves to talk about the main topic. The main chapter here would be the rise of fast casual as one of the 25 for 25. An ode to our podfather himself, Bill Simmons, 30 for 30 on ESPN. The rise of the burger is something that, you probably in hindsight could say like, yeah, we saw that coming, but go to 1999, 2000, it was hard to actually see. And definitely nobody saw the rise of fast casual. And there were a lot of factors, and this is just a working hypothesis, but one of the things that sort of changed how we had the proliferation of fast casual, which we're talking about Shake Shacks, Chipotle, Sweetgreen, Cava, etc., was because of the financial crisis. So you almost need something as a global event to help shift and wake up and change dining patterns. And we saw that most recently with the pandemic, with the rise of mobile delivery stuff. But before then, there were a lot of factors. I'm not going to say this is the only ones, but one thing that helped get to that level, and I think burgers have always been part of the American culinary conversation canon, but there were a couple elements that happened that led to Shake Shack. And again, this is a working hypothesis, but one of those moments that I don't know if gets enough credit was Daniel Boulud, the chef I work for, the great Daniel Boulud from Lyon, France. He's got so many great restaurants. I work for my Café Boulud, and there would be times we would do DB Bistro Moderne, which was a bistro in the Meatpacking Theater District, West Side. 40 or something. Jean-Francois Brule was the chef, and we would do a lot of catering things and special events. And there would be days where I'd be making these short rib burgers, right? It was like a blend, and there was short rib and braised short rib, and there was foie gras stuffed in the center, and it was giant. It was stuffed on brioche with frisée and like a custom tomato marmalade and pomme soufflés served in a silver cup. And I think it was like $28. And people were like, what the fuck? America, New York, they've had fancy burgers, but this is way before social media. This is before anybody thought you could screw with the classic like that. And listen, we all grew up eating McDonald's hamburgers and fast food hamburgers, and maybe you'd go to like a steakhouse and have a burger there. But this was, to my knowledge, and I'm sure there were other luxury gourmet hamburgers before, but not that, none of them got the acclaim or the notoriety of DB's burger, Daniel Boulud's burger. And it became a real lightning rod, and people liked it. It sort of struck a nerve because, number one, the price point was higher. I believe it was in the high 20s. I think today it probably might be like a $50 burger. Maybe Daniel still serves it, I'm not sure. And you had a French guy taking on an American classic. And I think that was the first time people had the conversation, like this meta conversation of what a burger could be. Because at the time, burgers were charbroiled from Burger King, a hamburger from McDonald's. The last time McDonald's had a fucking burger that sort of was part of the cultural conversation was in a negative way, because they had this thing called the McDLT, which was separate burgers from the hot and the cold, and you would make it. And listen, I don't think it went that well because people don't like fucking with their burger. So, and the only other time I could think about burgers being sort of part of a cultural conversation was when Coming to America came out, and you had McDowell's as a parody on McDonald's. But as a whole, burgers just didn't really change. No real innovation. So again, not that I did all that homework, I'm just giving you my 25 from my experience. The DB Bistro burger was so important, and I think criminally underrated in the conversation of burgers that sort of took off. And at least in New York, not to be New York centric, but you had J.G. Mellon's, you had P.J. Clark's, you had places that were known for their burgers, and you could get them juicy, medium rare. You could get a burger at Peter Luger Steakhouse. And the steakhouse burger still wasn't there yet, and to this day, that's probably the only burger I would get medium rare that's super juicy at a steakhouse because of the trim. It's all leftover and it's delicious. But for the most part, you would get a burger at a quick service restaurant and it would be hammered. When I mean hammered, it's thin and it's cooked through. There's no temperature variation. Nothing wrong with that. I grew up eating those hamburgers. And when you would go to, say, like, I play a lot of golf. I'd go to these fancy golf courses and then you'd get a burger and they would ask you what temp. And I was like, what? Medium rare. Medium rare was always a brave move because it's ground beef. This is why sourcing your ingredients are important, which is also in the late 90s and early aughts, there was all this E. coli stuff, still happens today. There was a lot of security concerns. Even England had mad cow disease. There was a lot of stuff going on with beef. So at the time, people didn't want to mess with a burger that wasn't sort of cooked well done. 2000, 2001, you have DB Bistro Burger. It sort of captures the imagination of New York. Not everybody, because word foodie didn't exist, but for those that were in food, it was a novel idea of like, whoa, this classic American item now is something completely different. And expensive. Fast forward, Carrie Heffernan was then the chef at 11 Madison Park, the late Carrie Heffernan, partner to the great Claudia Fleming. And when he was a chef there, at 11 Madison Park, this is before Denny Hum and Will Guidara took it over. It's located with Tabla in the then Credit Suisse building. And the reason this is important is because this is the genesis of Shake Shack. And the lore really is that Danny didn't care too much about it at the time. It was like a hot dog cart scribbled on the back of a napkin. Almost seems apocryphal, but it was almost like a throwaway. And at the time, 11 Madison, while a great restaurant, was, dining was an in-between stage, right? People were sort of shifting away from super high-end to more casual. I think Momofuku was clearly a big part of that. And then out of the blue, this little cart, because it was a cart in Shake Shack in the Madison Square Park area. If you've been to New York, it's on 20th to 23rd Street in Madison to Park Ave. It just sort of took off, slowly but surely. I think it was focused on hot dogs, and it was hamburgers. And then there would be these queues, and then there was the shake cam, and so you could watch how long the line might be. And then next thing you know, 11 Madison Park with this giant restaurant became a lot of the space was like the commissary for Shake Shack. Then Will and Daniel took it over, and there was a separation, church and state. They had Randy, who worked for Daniel Meyer, and whole team sort of took place, and Shake Shack opened up in Citi Field. Then it expanded to the Middle East in the MENA region, and that's where they perfected a lot of things. Just to show you that there was no grand plan for Shake Shack to become this sort of behemoth that it's become. It was all just like a lot of things that happened great in food. It was just trying things out. A lot of things were trial and error, right? The next thing that happened, though, was clearly Shake Shack becomes this New York thing. People love it. But something else happens. They start using pat lafreda, which has long been one of our great meat purveyors in New York City. You had Piccinini Brothers, you had a few others, but lafreda and the lafreda family, and then you had Mark there as well, but they started to market themselves and also take time to source out things like Creekstone Farms and get better meat and customize blends for restaurants. And they had the proprietary blend for Shake Shack. And this was the first time where you had heard about burger blends, but never at a fast casual sort of shack, literally. It was so tiny, but they were using the same quality beef you might get at a high-end restaurant. And that was like a huge contrast. And lafreda became, when I joke, like the NVIDIA of the burger industry. Right? If you wanted to have a serious burger program, and now all of a sudden, every restaurant had to have a burger. And I just wanted to state, before Daniel Boulud, if any chef put a burger on the menu, they would be laughed out of the fucking city. That was just like, you're a shoemaker. That's sort of speak for being a clown, right? Something I'm called a lot these days. Fine. But today, everybody has a burger to some degree. But back then, 2000, 1999, nobody, including the great Daniel Boulud. That's why it was such a revolutionary thing. One of the best chefs America's ever had put a very customized, personalized burger on the menu. And I think that emboldened people to sort of experiment with the idea. Now that trickles down to Shake Shack, and Shake Shack now is using high-end ingredients, something that is an important asterisk thing that you're going to see as a pattern throughout this whole process of rise of fast casual is quality level increased dramatically. So now you have lafreda sourcing great beef and customizing their blends for specific places, and Shake Shack's blend was the most famous, and you couldn't name Shake Shack without lafreda, and lafreda got more and more popular. And now, because of that, because they weren't just burger producers, they were people that sold primal cuts and steaks to steakhouses and aged and everything, it sort of just became the celebrity butcher. And that's a whole nother story. But now going back, the thing that changed was now you have high-end burger, you have a low-end burger, and the in-between started to change. You had Hillstones with their burger. Everyone in the in-between started to get a better burger. And this happens like over a 5 to 10 year period. But the burger that really changed the game again involves Pat LaFreda, but it also relies on the great Keith McNally, who opened Manetta Tavern, which was a longtime classic West Village, Greenwich Village staple steakhouse. And he took it over, and Lee and Riyadh, who now have, Franchette and what's the Lacote, what was the Laveau d'Or? They have a handful of restaurants. They're our boys. We love them dearly. Lee and Riyadh, who are the chefs for McNally at Balthazar, they were, no surprise, also, they worked for many years for Daniel Boulud, right? So they have this mindset as well. They took over Manetta Tavern, and they updated the room. It's beautiful. It still is one of the best places to eat in New York City. I love it, sitting at the bar. And then they got the Black Label Burger. And this is the time where everything was Black Label. They were like the first people in the restaurant business that I know of that started to say, we have the regular Manetta Tavern burger, but now we have the Manetta Tavern Black Label, customized, personalized Pat LaFreda signature blend. And it was basted in butter, and it was this whole thing. And I don't remember the price point, but I think it was in the high 20s, and people freaked the fuck out all over again. And it was this perfect storm, right? You have high-end, low-end, and now this mid-market burger starts to become the talk of the town. And because people talk about it, when people talk about it in a successful restaurant, then everyone starts to copy. And that became the genesis of burgers really getting this sort of new wave renaissance all over America, because it was the provenance of low-end, fast casual, you're at a bar, just give me a greasy burger. And then all of a sudden, and you see this in all kinds of culture and art and fashion, something on the low end now gets sort of combined, juxtaposed with something that's on the high end. And then now you have the low and the high, and it starts to trickle up and down. And now, 2025, burgers are everywhere. You have vegan burgers, you have every kind of burger all the time. And that's great. But to me, you really can't talk about the burger without La Freda. You can't talk about it without DBGB. You can't talk about it without sort of Shake Shack. And you can't talk about it without Manetta Tavern. I'm sure I'm missing a whole host of other burgers. So don't at me. This is just my working hypothesis talking to you guys right now about it. And that's why I feel like in one bucket for just restaurants, right, in 2025, you have 11 Madison Park because they were instrumental in Shake Shack. You have Manetta Tavern. You have DBGB Bistro Moderne. Not DBGB, DB Bistro Moderne. DBGB was his East Village restaurant that was near Co. DB Bistro Moderne. If you haven't tried that, I'm sure you can still get that burger. It's not like any burger you've ever had. It's still delicious. And I'm sure there's a whole host of other places that were instrumental, but in my estimation, those are restaurants that were really important as a sort of food item. Clearly, the burger has been around for 100 years, going to Louis' Luncheonette in New Haven. But this burger that took off the past 25 years is a real recent invention of the sort of high-end gourmet burger and a high-end sort of quick service $8 to $10 burger. And all that goes to the 25 trend of quick service, fast casual rise, which we'll talk about another day. To my knowledge, when we did it, I don't know if Shake Shack still does these pop-ups. They do pop-ups all over the world, but we had the longest line at the time. I think it was a 4 to 5 hour wait. We did so many fucking burgers. It was a Shake Shack. We had our Hozon sauce from our lab, so that took some chickpeas and a little chili, and we folded it in with some other aromatics. It was really simple, beautiful, glutamic acid heavy sauce. We made shrimp patties. So we glued those together with transglutamate. So they were little shrimp squares, pan fried those. That was a whole fucking debacle as well, because one thing you gotta know when you're running a fast food concept, or even in any restaurant, when you're cooking off one griddle or even a fryer, something you might wanna ask, because my son has shellfish allergies, is do you fry things separately? Because the cross-contamination is a real thing. So we had to let people know that, you know, if you're gonna have this burger, that the griddle is gonna have shrimp on that. And that was a huge pain in the ass. But we figured out the logistics and we figured out a way to make it work. But for the most part, the reason you don't see shellfish at a lot of restaurants is because of that, not just allergies, but because of religious reasons as well. So shrimp is a big pain in the ass. Bacon, also a pain in the ass, but not nearly as badly as shrimp because of the allergies, which is why, in general, even if you're going to a place and they have a shellfish, you know, thing, right, and they'll say, no, we can cook it, you should ask, how are they cooking? Is it a separate fryer? Is it a separate griddle? Whatever. But we were making these shrimp stack burgers. So it was the shack burger with the shrimp stack of the shrimp and the sauce, and there was chopped iceberg lettuce. I remember opening up the drawer, and there's like 100 people in what is like 400 square feet. And I pull open the low boy, and a low boy is a drawer. So if you're cooking, there's a low boy drawer. You pull it open, and that's where you keep a lot of your foods. And I pull it open, and I'm like, holy shit. So this isn't it. We don't have enough beef, but if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I can fit 8 burgers this way, 4. So each row I have basically 32. So I could fit, you know, depending on how deep your low boy is. This is a deep 6-inch hotel pan. Pull it out and I'm like, fuck, man, that's like minimum 64. I think you actually have like, you know, 96 orders, single serve in one low boy. And I'm like, doing the math, I'm like, shit, like, you just need like 10 of these for a really good day in sales. And we were toying around with Fuku at the time. And I was like, man, when we're making these things, and now it's a completely different process with Fuku, much more streamlined. It's a pain in the fucking ass. We're taking chicken and we're We're boning them out, pounding them out. It took 30 minutes for one fucking patty, a chicken sandwich. This one I'm opening up and I'm marveling at the economics of the size as well. So I'm pulling this in, depending on the size, you could honestly have 90 burgers. The buns, you're not making them. They're all stacked up on racks. So I'm like, that's 36. So 3 bags, 1 deep hotel pan, and I'm feeding around 90 to 100 people, or 90 to 100 orders. In one full cart of food. You could feed 1,000 people almost, And I'm thinking to myself, no wonder they can do it in this small space. This is unbelievable. And if you have a commissary kitchen, which they had at the time with Love and Madison, later it was much bigger, they have their own commissary, you don't need a lot of space. You could actually feed 1,000, 1,500 people out of 300 square feet if everything was set up perfectly. And that's when I was like, oh shit, no wonder everybody wants to make hamburgers, right? Once you get over the standard operating procedure of cooking things, because this again is an issue. Again, before getting higher quality meat, ground beef was a dodgy thing, right? So just the way the world works, things that were weak and a potential bottleneck, that gets solved. And you have this proliferation of burgerness. And all of a sudden, burger things start popping up. Five Guys was really popular too, but again, looking and analyzing the Shake Shack model, I just sort of marveled at how efficient it all was compared to other forms of fast casual. So if you look at Sweet Green, it's so much room. Lettuce takes a lot of fucking space, man. If you go to, I knew this from doing chicken, it's a lot of work. If you do any other fast food, it's a lot of work. And all the work's fucking hard, okay? But the one thing I really admired, what I did not understand, and if you're in the business, maybe it makes a little more sense than someone that's not as a civilian, I marveled at the compactness of how much return on investment you could get and deliciousness from the size of everything you're working with and the amount of variety you could have out of one burger. You can have different combinations and everyone can customize it the way they want. And plus you have the secret items. And if you think about it, just like at In-N-Out, there's fucking 100 different off the item combinations you can make. So it became this perfect storm of being able to customize something that everyone can order, but you can make your own, tied in with the sort of the affordability, because at the time people wanted cheaper things, not super luxurious things, because people were definitely losing money at the time in the mid to late aughts. And it's delicious and it's simple. But to me, the big fucking holy fuck moment was, oh my God, burgers, still hard, but maybe less hard than other kinds of fast casual stuff, which is why I thought you saw so many burger places opening up. So anyway, take a break and we'll get into an Ask Dave.
Quick Ask Dave today. We got Jack from New York City, where foreshadowing we may be soon. Major Domo Level 6, whose favorite dish they make is oyakodon, and their best meal is at Sushi Nakazawa. And Jack's question is, what opportunities in the food industry do you think would be good for people leaving software engineering? The industry's imploding and I want to get involved in food, maybe on the tech side of things.
Well, Jack, thank you for the question. 6, acceptable. Oyakodon, for those that don't know, it's one of the things that I love about Japanese language, is that it's more poetic and beautiful than a lot of food items that you could find, at least in an American language lexicon. Ko is child. It's one of the reasons why Momofuku Ko was child of Momo whatever, but Momofuku Ko. But oyakodon, one of my favorite dishes, you take chicken, you cook it in some mirin, some sake, some soy, some dashi, onion, scallions, whisking, a beaten egg, serve it over rice. It's delicious. So one of my favorite dishes as well. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think over maybe a year ago, I was throwing around the idea because I was talking to my friends, a lot of who are these successful investors in these AI companies, and they were telling me all about this stuff. And at the time, it was, the two big things were GLP drugs and AI. And I was thinking, I think what might happen is all these blue collar jobs are going to become highly coveted, right? Because until robots can replace the dexterity of a human hand, which again is going to happen more quickly than I originally anticipated. We did that show with Hulu, Next Thing You Eat, and we had about a 50-year window talking to robotics experts. But again, I've been told now that it's probably closer to 10 to 15 years. That being said, if you're a plumber, if you're a contractor doing construction work, something that for the time being cannot be replaced because you have some kind of skill set. Not too dissimilar to talking about experiential restaurants, right? You have a skill set that because of your hard-earned knowledge cannot be made a facsimile by somebody else. Be a plumber. And these are the jobs that are not going to be replaced. Outside of that, who the fuck knows? But for those that have been screwing around with all this AI stuff, it is great and also terrifying. So yeah, a lot of my friends that do work in tech are a little bit concerned, as anybody that is working in a traditional white-collar profession, right? So I would be rightfully scared. But again, I have friends that are institutional salespeople in finance. They're like, my job doesn't exist anymore. If you're a radiologist, that might not happen in 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. One of which is tech. And I don't know if the answer I'm going to give you is the answer you're going to want to hear. I think for the same reasons why the industry is imploding in tech, it's imploding everywhere else. And I think the tech firms that are in hospitality already have, so you might want to join them. If I was going to start out in tech, I'd probably want to join Ben Leventhal's Blackbird. Originally, it was doing more crypto-y things, but now, listen, if there's going to be one person I'm going to bet on, it's going to be Ben. Started Eater with Locke, and then he did Resy. He did a couple other things, but as a serial entrepreneur, I think he understands what's going on in the culinary space. He understands from the diner's perspective, and he understands how to be an advocate for restaurants and chefs. And I know there's a lot of tech stuff, and his team is great. I know Marguerite from Momofuku is on board, and they have a great team across the board, Fred Wilson, et cetera. So if I was going to be in tech and food, that's probably where I'd start. Otherwise, you have American Express. They just bought back Resy. They also, but they bought that from Squarespace. Open Table is bigger than ever, and they're kicking ass right now. So I work with those legacy brands, but the new brand that I probably think would be Blackbird. And Talk got bought by who? American Express? Yeah. So you might have to work for one of those big firms, but outside of that, you have Toast, which is also a giant company. They do a lot of the POS system software stuff, and that disrupted the whole fucking business. But for a restaurant, big restaurant groups need a director of technology, CTO. So that's something you might want to think about. That's more and more important for a big restaurant group. So whether Union Square Cafe or Union Square Hospitality, Major Food, or even Momofuku, you all have like a CTO type of person these days because there's so much inbound. If you don't have a website, you're not taking reservations, you're integrated with all of these other apps, you're going to need that. So maybe that's something you might want to do. But outside of that, I don't know if I would start something de novo because I think all those good ideas are already taken. And the hardest part right now in tech is the collection of data. Whoever wins the data game is going to have the big company. The problem with the data game is getting consent from diners and being able to sell that information or use that information with other restaurants. I would love nothing more than to have an aggregate of data for all the great customers out there that all the restaurants use, right? But we don't have that right now. But the big issue, again, is not just for the tech industry. I think anybody, it's like if your job can be replaced by something that's an algorithm, it's natural to think. I mean, listen, I'm nervous. I think anyone in the business and food is a bit nervous about the automation of things to come. But for right now, I think we have some time where robots aren't coming for us anytime soon, but they're coming. Anyway, thanks for that question. If you've been listening and watching the podcast, you'll know that I've talked about the Shake Shack burger. I've talked about DBGB, his Bistro Modern burger, and how burgers really took off. I feel like many chefs got tired of trying to do the whole rigmarole of running a fine dining or ambitious independent restaurant that did like 80 that had like 80 seats, and you had to do 360 covers a day, et cetera, to do something that was more meaningful, that was easier, not necessarily easier, less moving pieces. So a lot of people were doing quick service stuff. We did with Fuku, which is our fried chicken sandwich shop. Really hard to execute at the beginning because we were pounding chicken breast to order. We were boning hundreds of chicken thighs. We weren't using white meat, it was only dark meat, pounding them out to order, frying them, and we had these giant spicy chicken sandwiches that were, quite frankly, a total pain in the ass. And I didn't really have this revelation until I did the first pop-up we did with Shake Shack in Madison Square Garden location, I think 2016, 15. We did a shrimp stack. I'm not gonna make that for you today, but I'd never been behind the scenes at a Shake Shack. And what I saw was something that sort of blew my mind because of how more streamlined it was in terms of the operation. There are less moving pieces. I think at the time they were trying to make their initial version of fried chicken tenders, which they later perfected, but that was the beginning. But the beautiful thing about running a restaurant that is quick service, fast casual, is that there's not that many moving pieces. The variables are relatively limited. So when I saw how they would just pull open their low boys and just make these burgers, and I would spend hours and hours at an In-N-Out just watching their operations, I became completely infatuated with making burgers. Not that the world needed more hamburger spots. I mean, I could list Habit Burger, Five Guys, you name it. There's Arby's, Carl's Jr., there's Whataburger. Almost every area in America has like their own local fast food chain. What's the one in the Pacific Northwest that everyone loves? Burgerville. I think it's Burgerville, which is good. Great milkshakes. Anyway, I'm going to explain to you how we came with our burger that we're calling, the Tasty Deluxe. And we had that. We've done a few pop-ups, something I really want to do because a lot of it was inspired by what I think is my favorite burger, White Castle, which I believe its inspiration was White Manna. If you haven't been to White Manna in New Jersey, it is the best. It's like one of my favorite places in the world. But we didn't want to make a facsimile of that. We wanted to do something that was us, a little bit more Asian American, a little bit different. And first, we're going to start off with the beef. This is not our blend. We had a proprietary blend. Again, that was done in conjunction with a lot of the great meat purveyors, but I mean, Pat LaFreda is probably the most famous. But you want to get as close to a 70-30 ratio. I think the great Bill Durney at Red Hook Tavern has his proprietary blend. He even had the dye made for his grounding of his beef, a specific blend and a specific temperature. It's like really a science. And the whole goal about getting that right blend and the fat ratio is that when it melts and it cooks, you're getting the perfect balance of meat and fat. Because it's got to be juicy, it's got to have flavor. So anything that's super lean, that's not what you want. Just to show you what most of the traditional hamburger patties have been, they're smash burger before smash burger was a thing. It's probably thinner than that and just hammered. I have no idea how McDonald's makes their burgers, but I don't think my theory is they're not raw, they're already cooked. Same with Burger King. I would love to know, I've never worked at a McDonald's. Has anyone here worked at a McDonald's? I'd love to know if the burgers are actually cooked beforehand. Like their sausage patties.
The internet says that most burgers are cooked ahead of time and kept in a heated cabinet.
They're cooked ahead of time, right?
Yeah. But the quarter pounder is cooked to order. It's the only one.
But I'm just doing this as a demonstration, not as a smash burger, which has been all there is. And I love smash burgers, but too many burger smash burgers. And I'm gonna make a farce with, I'm gonna show you how we would do our burger. Originally called the Moon Palace Burger, but we thought that the better name would be Tasty Deluxe because I love White Castle, which honestly, I know this doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement. It's sort of sad when you look at it because it's a steamed burger. There's holes in the center because it's steamed through, but it's so good.
I know people have talked about like pressing on the burger, and I saw you just do it. Like some people are like, you're pushing out the juices.
You are pushing out the juices. But what I mean by a burger like this not really making any difference in terms of honestly, the fat content even, is, again, I'm hammering this burger really to just show you that this is would even be thinner than this, like a McDonald's cheeseburger patty. We don't have the proper bun. It's, would have the special sauce, and there's usually like one pickle, right? And you'll see that completely hammered. This is what most hamburgers are like at most fast food restaurants. Really, a quarter pounder is maybe literally thicker, but it's always hammered. When I say hammered, well done.
Is it well done because it's easier to keep a consistent...
Safety. I wanted to use King's Hawaiian. People may not realize it, but King's Hawaiian is one of the great Asian American businesses. I mean, they're massive. Gotten to know the family really well over the years, and King's Hawaiian is really just a Portuguese bun. And a Portuguese roll is really something that is just a normal bread with a little bit of sweetness. And I found that sweetness is quite nice in a hamburger. And we wouldn't do anything. This would be our Tasty Deluxe, single patty. You do a double, and we would serve it exactly like that. I want it pure. I don't want a lot of vegetables on it. Again, I'm not a vegetables, unless it's onions. I know every burger place is different, but if this bun was smaller and more sad looking, it would look like a McDonald's cheeseburger, which I love. One reason why I didn't want to make a bigger burger like Shake Shack, I think there's more margin of error to me. So my dream, that's one of the reasons why I'd love to make dog food one day. No one's going to complain, right? There's only one way. You have varieties, but there's no optionality. And with a burger, not every burger you want to eat medium rare. A lot of burgers you probably want to eat well done. And you couldn't really do that until you got higher quality beef. We're going to go more in depth into a lot of the other factors that happen in that sort of fast casual space. But the biggest factor in general as a hypothesis was higher quality ingredients. You saw it with Chipotle, you saw that with Sweet Green, and you definitely saw that with Shake Shack. So you couldn't really use better beef before because people didn't think there was a market. Hamburgers at large were just thought as sort of so lowbrow. That until you got better quality meat, that people weren't thinking about, bigger burgers. I wanted to do it where you could cook it more quickly. When you smash the burger down, you get more Maillard reaction, and that's another reason when you smash it. You might sacrifice the juice to give it that caramelization, the glutamic acids that cook the sugars in the beef to get caramelized, and that's what's going to make the burger more juicy. There's a lot of burgers out there, but one of the burgers I love the most are these little sliders. I don't think there's much more you can do with this burger, with the exception of maybe being alternative meats. We did a lot with Impossible Foods, still do. And meat alternatives, which might be cell cultivated. That's a whole nother story. But as a whole, the burger business, if you're doing a quick service shop, it's just a marvel because it's so streamlined. And you can get the standard operating procedure really dialed in. So again, how I like the burger, which is why I don't really bother the grilling if I'm going to make burgers at home. I think a griddle is more important. Again, a lot of this is inspired by White Mana and White Castle. And the thing that I liked about Martin's potato roll was that it is sweeter than most sort of potato buns. So why don't we sort of accentuate that sweetness by getting it even more sweeter? And that's a King's Hawaiian. And we can add a lot of seasonings and stuff, but if you're getting good quality beef, which we wanted to do, and just sort of look at it less a hamburger, more like a meat sandwich that's greasy and all these things that you want. That's sort of what I was looking for. And the beautiful thing about hamburger is there's so many varieties, right? I love them all. But I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I've learned, and basically one of which is, again, maybe I'm just slow to the party here and dumb. Making a burger is infinitely less work than, say, doing a fried chicken sandwich or doing a burrito bowl thing. It has its own challenges, don't get me wrong. You're dealing with a whole host of other things, but the variables are much less. And it's as American can be. People love hamburgers. More than anything, they love hamburgers. And they don't really want the hamburger fucked with. Anyway, this is a very simple burger. This was an 80-20 ratio. 75-25 actually is probably the right. You want a different blend of brisket and short rib and chuck. And having the right blend of burger is everything. When you're thinking about really two ingredients, bread and meat, cheese is really just to glue it together. You have the onions to accentuate the sweetness because they're griddled. Tomatoes got a lot of umami. But when you start thinking about a burger, to me, it's the same reason why I think people love pizza so much. It's the perfect amalgamation of all the things that people might like. Texture, variation, temperature variation, hot, cold, texture, right? Soft, a little bit crunchy, salty, sweet. You got a lot of umami, right? People may not realize it, but this is an umami bomb, right? You've now caramelized the meat, so there's a lot more sugars developed, so you've got that glutamic acid. You are cheese, also a big vector for glutamic acid. Fermented tomato paste, umami bomb, right? Sweetness from the onions. There's other things you can do to enhance, right? You had umami burger. There was literally a chain called Umami Burger that was back in the day very big. So you have acidity. It's all of these things that when you sort of pull one piece out and you look at it, you're like, that doesn't make sense. But again, the sum is greater than the parts. And that to me, again, if that makes any sense, is similar to why people love pizza so much, right? It has all the elements that make people sort of happy. It's easy to understand. It's easy to taste and eat, and balance. It got all the things you can taste in your palate and texture and temperature contrast. So I sound like an asshole talking about burgers, but not a surprise. People fucking love them. I love them. Thanks, guys. We're gonna continue this 25 for 25. We still haven't moved officially into this. Dave and I are gonna go to New York. We got EatsCon. We're gonna have about 5 to 7 podcasts in New York with some friends. And we're gonna come back here and hopefully, fingers crossed, we're gonna move into our studio proper. We're gonna have a 2-week break on Dinner Time Live, and then we're gonna come back with more fucking episodes. But we're getting there, piecemeal, but we're getting there. So thank you to Dave, thank you to Molly, thank you to everyone at The Ringer. Appreciate it, guys. Talk to you soon.